Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to get started on these introductions and the thank yous because with the length of Dave Tiberi's bio, if I don't start now, he's not going to get a chance to speak. So, first and foremost, I want to thank Ralph Citrullo for being the lunch sponsor for today. For those of you who were here, Ralph did a talk on mergers and acquisitions earlier this morning. It was fantastic. So thank you to Ralph. Today's keynote speaker for our Wednesday lunch, day 2 of the Delaware Economic Summit, is Dave Tiberi. I actually, before I go through the introduction, he may not even remember this, probably doesn't because he does so much for the community, but I remember Dave Tiberi came to a CYO, Catholic Youth Organization group that I was a part of through St. Elizabeth's High School back in probably 1992 or 93. And he had a chance to talk to the Catholic Youth Organization of St. Elizabeth's, and I still remember to this day how impressed I was for somebody to give up their time to come and talk about their experiences and really try to connect with kids, and it really stood out with me. You did a lot of that, Henry Milligan did a lot of that. There was a contingency in Delaware that you kind of don't forget when you're born and raised here, and as I read through the things that Dave has done even more recently, it resonates, and it didn't start yesterday. His act for giving back has been there, his appetite for a long time. So Dave Tiberi was born and raised in Delaware. He's the second youngest of 14 children. Known for his success in the world of boxing, he became Delaware's first champion in 1991 when he won the IBC Super Middleweight World Championship. In 1992, Dave fought in a nationally televised contest for the IBC middleweight crown against James Toney and lost in a split decision. The fight ranks as one of the most controversial matches in boxing history. The decision sparked a U.S. Senate investigation into the sport, resulting in the first national boxing bill signed by President Clinton to address the health and safety issues and to change unethical practices in the boxing industry. The bill is referred to as the Alley Boxing Reform Act. And that was, if I'm not mistaken, because you had clearly won that fight. And the split decision basically said that you didn't win that fight. So while it was crimes and endless calls of big paydays to fight, Dave decided not to box again. He turned down millions for a rematch with Toney, and to Dave, the issue wasn't about the money, it was about standing as a light in a dark business full of corruption. It was clear to him that it was a place where God wanted him to be. While Dave might be getting older, slowing down, he's not. He came in earlier today, and someone said, "Oh, you're the fighter." He said, "Yeah, I used to be." I said, "No, it's just different battles today," which is very true. So Dave took the lead in opening 2 youth centers, Dave Tiberi Youth Center and Middletown Youth Center. For over 23 years working with the Delaware Youth for Christ and outreach targeted at helping incarcerated youth. For the past 3 years, he worked with George Krupansky as a state chairman for the Boys and Girls Club's 42 Youth Centers annual campaign. He's a member of the Delaware Sports Hall of Fame. Over 22 years teaching self-defense tactics with the Delaware State Police and municipalities. And also, I'm actually an alumni member of the Dave Tiberi Boxing Boot Camp. It's dedicated to business leaders that need to be held accountable in their fitness life. It's an intense 1 to 2 hour workout weekly of circuit training on heavy bag, speed bag, pad work, and technique. It's not for the faint of heart, as you'll know if you've ever taken advantage of that. Brian and Tang has as well. You'll definitely be breathing heavy. So, Dave, please welcome to joining Dave Tiberi.
They said the 4 o'clock speakers run late, so I'm going to run for a few hours. First of all, Brian and Todd, this to me is exciting. Why? Because I'm so invested in the Delaware community, and it's so important that we establish different events like this, and summits, and really giving back as business leaders, because we've got really more than ever in our society. It's important to keep our money circulating locally. I think doing business to business and establishing this the first year with the infrastructure and the enthusiasm. I'm looking forward to years to come where this is going to be not only locally but regionally and nationally a destination for companies that want to do business in Delaware. They're going to have to come to the summit, so I'm really excited about that. It's interesting, and Ty, thank you for the opening, and you just gave my speech away. But I looked at the boxing. I looked today what I was going to talk about, and I was thinking, you know, probably going to think I'm going to start with the boxing ring or a woodroom, but instead I want to talk about a cemetery. And I had my friend Dr. Smith and I yesterday sat down. We had a deep conversation. It was a lot of fun, and just bouncing back and forth. And it's interesting when you think of a cemetery. My wife, in the summer, we like to walk at the beach. And we, in Lewis, Delaware, it's such a quaint little town, and we like to see read the signs and find out about the little history of a fisherman's town. But it was a little deeper when we went to a cemetery. Anybody walk to a cemetery lately? And never used to do it. It was kind of, when I was younger, it was kind of, and then as I got older, you read the history. It's like a lot of history in these cemeteries. So went through an historic cemetery in Lewis. And so as we walked through the cemetery, my wife was reading some of the signs, I was reading some of the signs, and then talked about the ships that come into the area and how the fishermen were buried at the cemetery. Then I saw 2 governors that were buried in the cemetery. Then I was really intrigued. I'm like, I'm a Delawarean. I'm up and down the state all the time. They're from Delaware, a number of them from downstate initially. So as I look at this history, I continue to read more and more. And then something does grab your eye, as we all know, is there's life, and then there's the beginning, and then there's that dash, and then there's the end. Well, this cemetery is an historic cemetery, so all the endings were there. But there's other cemeteries I've been to where there was no ending yet because they're still alive. So that dash is still going on in their life. And I want to talk about that dash. And that dash, right now I'm going to share my story because you have your own story with your dash. And as I go through that dash, I'm going to talk about the significance of that dash. And I have so many friends that I've read about in the papers over the years that have done some great things, and I'm just so impressed with their dash, the things that they're accomplishing, and then the things that they battle with. And so my dash is going to touch on boxing. It will touch on my business life. And as I move through that, I'm hoping that through today, that our businesses can be improved and we can be encouraged about, our contribution. But my dash is also going to be built around what I feel is, what Ty touched on in my opening, is my value of friendship. So much of what I'm going to talk about is going to be built around that, valuing relationships. So, Dave Tiberi was born in 1966, and I didn't find out until today that my buddy Ralph is a couple months older than me. And as we were talking, born in Wilmington, Delaware. Mother Helen, father Mario, father Italian, mother Scottish. As you can start seeing that dash begin as a child. And second youngest of 14 children, 11 brothers and 2 sisters. Somebody said, how'd you get into boxing? I said, I had 11 older brothers. And my 11 older brothers are a little pushy, so I had to add that. The significance of the dash, from trials to triumph. And I put it back in there, value of relationships. I try to spend more time in my office talking to my staff about valuing people. And it really starts in their home, because if they don't value what's in their home, they're not going to value what's in the office, or not going to value my things, and ultimately, that's also, I really believe, it feeds down to the customers. So, valuing relationships. Boxing trials. Take you through trials, and then I'm going to share some triumphs. In my trials, entering the sport of boxing, I was 5 years old. I had 6 older brothers that were boxers. And at 25 years old, I left the sport of boxing under major controversy. As the opening touched, as Ty touched on the opening, the fight led to a United States Senate investigation in the sport of boxing. You're going to see something today that every time something happened in my life, it was all built, what people would consider negative, when you look at it, you flip it to a positive as a triumph, it always dealt with people being there. People being there as a team, or people being there and cared enough to help. And that's why it's so much easier to give back, because we do serve a society where people say there's too many people that are selfish. But I think more than anything else, we have the greatest opportunity of having an impact in our community as a whole. just by our commitment of giving back and our value on relationships. And why am I so involved for so many years with the incarcerated youth affairs? People say, well, that's our next generation. Because right now these kids, when I go there, they don't feel there's a value in life. But maybe through what you said today, Ty, that my story could be a story, or your story could be a story to your own employee that you consider, what is wrong with this person? They keep doing the same thing over and over. So, value in relationships. What impact can you have on other people's lives? The initial stance that I took cost me millions of dollars. I turned down $500,000 and 2% of pay-per-view, not to sign a contract to fight James Toney a rematch, and it would have been a little over a couple $1 million. Because what ended up happening is when U.S. Senator Roth launched the investigation into my fight, Senator Roth was a valued friend, valuing relationships. Who ever thought that the only senator in the United States of America watching a fight on a Saturday afternoon with 22 million other people could be the guy that was the only person in the Senate that could investigate my fight? Valuing relationships. Senator Roth was watching my fight with his wife, Judge Jane Roth, and I remember a day after my fight getting a phone call from the senator's office, and an assistant calls and said, and I was in Atlantic City at the Taj Mahal, are you available for a phone call from U.S. Senator Roth? Well, I was humbled and shocked, and I said, yes. And so they put the senator on, and he said, I was very disgusted with what I watched yesterday. He said, I'm really not a boxing fan, but my wife is. He said, I would like to meet you at my office. I'd like to look into this. It's interesting, and my Christian faith, I really believe God puts things in place and lines things up. I say, Lord, I'm not the smartest guy. Like, shut the door you don't want me in, open the door you want me in. But in this situation, what was really awesome was the value that the senator saw in my community commitment, and my dedication to the Delaware community, and that meant a lot to him. So that opened the door even that much more why he had passion of what happened in that fight, and he bought into it. So the senator was the only senator in the U.S. that could investigate it. Why? He ran a group called the Subcommittee on Investigations. It was the only body in the Senate that could investigate a fight. You're going to see in my business life how similar things have happened. So Senator Roth was watching this fight. He was outraged, along with 22 million people. I couldn't have wrote a better script. The senator calls me. I go to the senator's office. Within 2 days, I'm sitting in Wilmington, Delaware, at the senator's office. And then within a few months, I'm in Washington, D.C. with Senator Sam Nunn, Senator Biden, Senator McCain, along with these senators. And here's a kid, keep in mind, of 14 kids from Newcastle, Delaware. And it was the greatest experience. But you know, it was a bigger fight than what happened in the arena on February 8th, 1992. Why? Because boxing suffers illiteracy. These people are paid, as one fighter said, it's like a modern-day slave industry. Fighters don't know how to read contracts. So I was really used as a vehicle, as a tool to be able to play a part in changing the sport of boxing. So Senator Roth, as the investigation got underway, many people from Delaware really know the story. This investigation gets underway, and I looked, and what I started with today with boxing trials and challenges is when I looked at what happened, and I look back now, Senator Roth starts the investigation. They find out that the two judges that awarded my opponent the fight were unlicensed in New Jersey, which is illegal. The only licensed judge, Frank Brunette, was a reputable judge, awarded me a fight 117-111. So now what happens is something that you're looking at, and you say, you know what, I may be used in a fight, but this is bigger than a fight. Because now there's some things wrong, there are some things that are lines crossed. And really now you're seeing why we say about light and darkness. Now you're seeing why you need a spotlight on the sport. And so as that happened, Senator was that much more ambitious and eager to bring Senator Biden on board as bipartisan support to say we need to move in the right direction here. So as the investigation gets underway, my purses went from Bob Aramall, from the top rank, $250,000. It became then a money issue, not a moral issue to them. Their point was, we gave the kid the opportunity, instead of looking at what was wrong, they were looking at what they felt. They were in control. Their attitude of the whole thing was, listen, we gave them the opportunity instead of looking at they broke rules and everything else. Who cares about rules? We've been doing this for years. There's no rules. So Senator Invest's investigation goes on. Within days after that, they find out that the referee was considered prior to that fight green and incompetent to do a championship. And he took a point away without a warning, which is illegal, which would also give him a fight. So all these things happened. Why was I the one used? I really believe because I made the good word God would stand firm, and I would not back down. And what was neat about the whole thing, I would have never had that opportunity if it wasn't the value of friendships. Why? Because a lot of you that follow sports can appreciate this, and even if you don't follow sports, you realize how important it is in your business world to bring good people aboard. I left the gym early on in New Jersey, and because there was a lot of division in the gym, and there was not a lot of unity, and I realized if I wanted to be a champion, I had to be around people that had the same feeling, the same goals, and everything else. So what ended up happening was I went to a gym in Philadelphia back in the late 80s, and that gym ended up, I saw some guys in that gym, and I said, if I really want to do this, I'm going to have to be ready. So as I transferred gyms, and I had to go to Philadelphia, what ended up happening was the 4 other guys that I partnered with, and we became each other's accountability partners, and the importance of valuable relationships, it kicked my butt on a regular basis. I remember this is what I really want to do. Man, wearing a suit's so much easier than getting beat up. But I remember these 4 guys, Prince Charles Williams for 7 years have played heavyweight championships. Stevie Little upset Michael Nunn for the super middleweight championship. And Bam Bam Hines won a junior middleweight championship. And of course, Bernard Hopkins for 6 years, my chief sparring partner, has made over $50 million in the sport of boxing. Why is that important? Because I realized I was in a dysfunctional home over in Newark, New Jersey area, in Clementon, New Jersey. Because everybody in there didn't have the same goals, dreams, and ambitions. Boxing trials. Your trials are the same way, you have your own stories. What ended up happening was all 5 of us, we ended up becoming each other's accountability partner, the way we lived, the way we ate, and everything else. And then, of course, within a few years, all 5 of us fought and won world titles. These were the same guys that had everything to lose that stood by me when I went to the Senate floor and spoke on behalf of fighters to clean up the sport. And as I go in from trials to triumphs, you're going to see what ends up happening, which is really exciting. And then I'm going to go on the business side as well. Supporting each other, fighting a fight. Each one of you have a fight. Every day. It could be your personal demons, your battle with anger, whatever else. And we all face these fights. And my goal is that I put my blinders on like any good racehorse not to get distracted. Because right now, when I look at my boxing trials, I know when I would get distracted, I would always get my knees up. But when I would stay focused and I made sure that I continue to have people hold me accountable each day, I have staff members that hold me accountable for my actions and the things I do. And you know what? The company has grown. And when I look, leaving boxing, and as I transition into business, when I look at the triumphs on the boxing side, 10 years after my fight, I will never benefit like my sparring partner, Bernard Hopkins. Bernard Hopkins made, I think, $53 million when I recently read online his recent purses. He made $53 million. I walked out of sport at my heyday at 25 years old because I really believed I could make a difference. Was my wife happy? Probably not, but she was supportive. And that had to be one of the hardest things when having a baby at home, to walk away from that. But there's times in our lives that we're going to be confronted with making decisions and taking a high road. And mark my words, if you have, I like using it to the kids because I use some Bible verses, but it says iron sharpens iron. Who wants to throw a knife in the kitchen? And I tell kids that, who do you hang around? We adults need to ask ourselves that because that's the first person in your office that might unethically change your books, might do something that's illegal, and then you all go down because your sin will find you out. And so when I look at the triumphs, is putting good people around you, and the impact has been incredible. When the Ali bill was signed 10 years after my fight, and they said it would never happen. 10 years after my fight, the Ali bill was signed. President Clinton signed it, and within months after that, the president of the IBF, which was the sanctioning body that would not do anything, that literally pleaded the fifth on the Senate floor when I sat right behind him. He pleaded the fifth because he thought his power and his control and his millions of dollars from the major organization would protect him. And he ended up doing 10 years in jail at 75 years old. So we caught up with him 10 years later. Was I wishing that? Was I praying that? Not at all. My prayer was, was that a light would shine to give everybody a fair opportunity to perform at a high level in sport with health and safety and achieving their dreams. I recently, as of course a number of you have been supportive, Curtis and so on, we entered back into boxing to be a change agent. We're doing a fight at Delaware Downs on May 9th. And this many years later now, I'm able to use my expertise and the strength that I learned from years ago to benefit young fighters and also the fan base coming up. And so we're excited. We've sold out Chase Center, Delaware Downs. It looks like we're going for another sellout Delaware Downs coming up. So when I look at how I was used as a tool to be able to be a change agent, it's been a real positive. I'm going to go now to quickly some business trials. I only have a couple more hours. So make sure you're awake out there. All right. After leaving boxing, my wife and I decided we were going to transition, and we knew pretty much my background. I had 20 years as a television talk show host here in the area. It was a variety talk show, and it was a lot of fun. So I knew the area that I was going to really start focusing on, which was the television area. And so my wife and I ran through my boxing career within a year. We literally, turning down the money, working with the Senate investigation, we literally didn't have a lot in the pot. I mean, we really had to work hard to take loans and start a whole new life. Because she asked me one day, she goes, do you want to return to boxing? And I felt that my best strength was to work with the Senate and to get the alley bill passed. So I took a stance not to step back in. So we launched TNT Video Productions. And we made a commitment that we were going to lease and purchase high-end equipment. Because Delaware at one time, back in the early 90s, was considered a wedding videographer market. And we knew that if we wanted to compete at a high level, you had to buy quality. So we ended up at the time buying beta cameras and beta decks and all this high-end equipment. And of course, I only had a few college courses in communications. So I had 20-some fights on network television. So I was getting prepared with my TV background, with my boxing background. And of course, the 20 years as a television talk show was a tremendous benefit. So as my wife and I made a commitment that we were going to do this, the company really started taking off. There was a tremendous need in the market for training videos, marketing videos, safety videos. And as those years went by, about 7 years into it, after years training in state police, I sat with the leadership of police and they said, hey, you know, crime and things are going up and there's dangers in the community. And the Secretary Mitchell at the time, head of public safety, said, there really needs to be something developed that when responders and facilities managers need information on a property, that they can access. So a number of you know, it's called Emergency Response Protocol. So when we launched that, almost 15 years ago, Emergency Response Protocol, the last few years really started getting legs, because recently in Delaware, crime has really picked up. Slip and falls, lawsuits have really picked up. So properties, being able to view cameras from properties and the prints and everything that we do, all of a sudden became very sellable. So as that took off, we were really excited. My wife and I really started seeing our numbers go up, projects going up, and we started mapping properties, feeding alarms in, feeding the cameras. So when you walk around, you can enter your property within seconds, and you can see if there's a crime going on your property. So ERP's taken off, and between the security install business and the software business, last few years, we started to see our numbers in a bad economy, so we were excited. Not expecting almost a year and a half ago, December, that I would get a call on the way to my office. And the phone call said, hey Dave, I just want to let you know, and it sounds like the guy was out of breath. He said, I don't know what to do. He says, our building's on fire. So I ended up coming in, I was coming into Newport at the time, and I followed 2 fire trucks into my building. When I arrived, there was already 2 there, so 4 fire trucks. And already there was probably at least almost a dozen, maybe about 10 firefighters in my building, on top of my building, squirting on my technology. And probably no other feeling to a person that's felt like you're a part of building something, that overnight you get a phone call, in this case in the morning, when I pulled up and I followed in as I'm preparing to go to a meeting that was for a contract. And of course this is happening. Well, your world can flip upside down. And when I look at what happened in that situation, and today I thought it was important to share this with you because I really believe, the iron sharpens iron, that we could really sharpen each other. And I think over the years, a number of you I know that we've done that. It's amazing what happens when you look at business trials. And I remember my wife standing there just crying, and I'm trying to be her strength. And I'm thinking, buddy, don't cut my roof. And he's just cutting my roof off the fire companies. And I'm like, but he has to let the building breathe. And so when this all happens, they came over and let me know and what's going on, and basically by the time we walked in there, every server rack was destroyed. And so you'll appreciate this in business because we're in a security business. One of the first cameras we always put in the property now is the server area because that's the memory of the company. So as these things are happening, and we realized within days that when a report came back, a few $100,000 of damage, everything was destroyed. So plan B. The key thing is, I had to make a decision. I remember pulling out of there, and probably, Steve, you're probably one of the ones I called, but I remember pulling out on Limestone Road and putting things in perspective. And again, my message today, as we look at that dash in between value and relationships, I remember pulling on Limestone Road by Kirkwood Highway, and I was driving, and I was like, and I don't even remember who it was, but the person called me and said his wife had breast cancer. And it was like, thank you for that call, because that's what I needed right now, because it really put things in perspective. When I'm worried about a fire, and this guy's battling for his wife's supporting and praying for his wife that she survived breast cancer. So when I looked at that, I looked at triumphs. Here's the triumph: no one was injured. And within days, our friend Guy Marcosi was one of the ones spearheaded it. The governor had 2 cabinet members, and you don't look for a return when you do things for people because it's just part of your DNA. And I know most of you in the room, and that's why we have such a great friendship, because we do anything for each other. But I went to EBC Carpet on Stanton. He called me one night and said, "Can you stop by a couple nights after the fire?" Within a short time, they had 30 business leaders and cabinet members sitting in a meeting and wanted to talk and see how they could help me. I called them the business Amish. They sat in and they said, "What do you want us to do?" And there was engineers, there was architects, and they said, "What do we need to do to help you?" My local church, there was a number of members that stepped up and whatever financial, whatever, what do you need to get where you need to be? And when I looked at that, a big word came to my mind and my heart was encouragement. Because none of us should do things conditionally. We're called to do things unconditionally. I had so much, until I sat with Steve yesterday, I had so much on my mind to talk to you about the tenacity of fighting the good fight in business, which I love to do. I spoke to the women's embroidery Hotel DuPont last Wednesday. It was so much fun. It was all about fighting and how you have to, every day you feel like you get up, or when you wake up, man, you put your mouthpiece in, it's another round. And how do you prepare for that fight? And this is even deeper, because really, our preparation in our lives, you never know when the daily battle is going to happen in your life. You never know when the bell's going to ring and say, "Man, you've got 3 minutes, and you've got to fight to win." And you've been down twice, you've got to knock the person out. So having that mindset, and you look at the triumph side, but you know what? It never was me. If you ever heard any of my interviews on ESPN, ABC, any of my Sports Illustrated interviews, it was always about us. I had a trainer, I had a cut man, I had a manager. Why? Because I value relationships. You hear this growing up, no man's an island, no woman's an island. And my challenge today is that when we look at trials and we look at triumphs, we've got to see from the trials, when we branch that off and that bridge is built, what's knocking that bridge down to the triumph. I find through the trials a lot of times is we try to accomplish it ourselves. And I'm going to speak for myself. I try to accomplish it myself. Well, how do I build that bridge from my trial, from the boxing to the triumph? You've heard the boxing, and now you're here in the business. It was truly strong relationships. It was truly strong friendships. Sometimes I go home and my wife, I vent to her and I'm like, you know what? So-and-so on the staff, they just don't get it. And then I remind myself, did I really spend time with them? Did I really let them know, how I feel? Because I could talk all day about value on relationships, but what type of communication am I having with them to let them hear my heart? That how much what they're doing affects me, and I need to hear their heart. So that communication. And let me tell you from the encouragement side what happened after that big word encouragement. These 30 men and women got me so motivated that right now our business, we just hired a head. I was telling Ralph earlier what was really neat. A guy that I needed ended up coming aboard right now. He's heading operations for us. He's a retired cop. He's got a master's in computer science. He ran University of Pennsylvania security systems. I couldn't have wrote a better job description. This guy wrote my job description, I told him. When I sent my job description, he comes back, he interviews, so he's taking the job. But prior to that, when the fire happened, my buddy Frankie Masello, he calls me and said, hey, listen, I have a data center on Kirkwood Highway you could probably use. So the transition was so smooth. But if I didn't know Frankie, if I didn't have a relationship with Frankie, as I do with you and everybody else, no different if you called me. But that's what relationships, to me, valuable relationships are all about. And you know, my number one way of getting business, anybody can probably guess. We're going to take yes? Referrals. Because if I know that Ty knows somebody, or I know, Brian or Curtis, I would reach out to any of you guys and say, hey, how you doing with me? Hey, Ralph, hey, listen, I want to try to get in this door. And to me, that's what it's all about. If you take a look right here, I do this with kids a lot of times. You have a quicksand, all right? And I said, would you stand on that? You'd rather stand on solid ground, right? And I said, but by every day we make decisions because we don't build relationships, we don't spend time communicating with people because we're so entrenched in to get the next sale that we straggle. We have one leg on quicksand and one leg on concrete, and we're saying, well, how much money can we spend to advertise? When you have people maybe 2 blocks away that can use your services, but you've never built a relationship. I'm doing it with a couple guys I'm bringing on in sales. I said to them, listen, if you're coming aboard sales, you're going to attend meetings with me because if you don't develop relationships first, you don't initially go in and sell somebody something. Develop the relationship, value that relationship, because that contract will last forever because people like doing business with people they like and they want to be friends with. And so that's my goal, that's my message today. And because I'm preaching to myself. And I'm hoping you see through my trials and my triumphs, it does all revolve around that. And I know some conversations yesterday about, and to support what I'm saying is, when you buy something, who do you buy it from? Your products, your cars. I just bought a new van from Willis Chevrolet. Willis Ford, I'm sorry. Willis Ford. And as I bought that car, don't tell Isaac that. As I bought that car, because Santosh, one of the owners, spent time with me. Santosh, he shared with Dave, listen, even if you know what, I'm not worried about it. If something happens, let me know. He spent the time with me. No different than my best friend, one of my best friends, Joey Casapula. I don't go anywhere by my wife because you won't go on Capri Eyes. I said, no, because Joey makes the best sandwiches. And I know when I sit with Joey, he cares enough to take time, to spend time. But if we can get that mindset, those relationships that we do, we spend time, that we buy, I don't care if it's your oil change or whatever else, you build that bridge relationship, you spend that time. Think about in a boxing ring, who ever thought that you would spend time with 4 other guys and develop accountability partners? Bernard Hopkins and I have nothing in common. And he tells people I'm his best friend. We have nothing in common. But you know what? I value this relationship because he cared enough to get me to the top. He cared enough to tell me, yo, Dave, don't drink coffee when you're boxing. Dave, listen, man. And he would spend time. It's valuable relationships. Bernard would spend time and watch my opponents for me like I did for him. When I fought James Toney, he emulated James Toney for 6 weeks in Split Rock Lodge and Poconos and beat me up. But guess what? The fight became fun because Tony became easy. Because Hopkins was willing to value my friendship enough to put everything to the side, put our color to the side, put his jail time to the side, and say, you know what? Man, you unconditionally care for me, man. This is because I love Bernard, because Bernard, and look what he is today. Bernard's a pinnacle in the sport of boxing. He right now is going down, they're trying to get him in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the first guys trying to get in the Hall of Fame before he's even retired. It's pretty incredible. But, valuing that. And why is that important? Because Brian and Ty did something today that very few people do. And the reason I appreciate what you 2 guys do is because I do it. It's all about stepping out in faith. When I stepped off the boat, I didn't look down at the water. I looked up and I looked straight ahead. Right now, you're developing the footwork and you're building the foundation, not on quicksand, but on solid ground. Why? It's because how's Delaware going to become a destination? What's going to flock people to Delaware if we don't start doing relationships? They start seeing, this is the Delaware way, relationship. I want to be part of that. All over the world people will come here. If they see groups like this that we're fellowshipping,
And then, hey, I call Curtis, and Curtis calls me. Hey, that security company, they type here, you need to get a hold of him. Not ABT, this is a local guy. You watch, we become the destination. Come on, let's go back to boxing. It worked with 4 other fighters. All the other ones peeled away and quit. But 4 fighters, 5 of us total, 4 of my sparring partners stuck with each other. All 5 of us fought and won world titles and stayed there. It's pretty incredible. And the same analogies I'm sharing with my own business community. It took 30 people to motivate me. I got hit in the stomach hard. I've never been hit so hard when that fire happened. Because it's part of your business sometimes, a big part of your DNA. You know, when somebody asks you, what do you do for what do you do for a living? So when that happened, but you know what? My supporting cast was these 30 guys and men and women that said, what can we do to help you get through this? And mark my words, what you guys have set up here is going to be incredible. This is only the first. This is the little appetizer of something major. Because why? You guys have the same mindset. I watch you in boot camp, where you feed off each other and everything else. That's part of valuing friendships. That's part of your DNA. That's valuing relationships. You care about people. In closing, now we went through our dash. In closing, with that final date on your tombstone. And this was actually very hard for me. Last night, I shot a couple texts out. What would you like after that dash? And then the final caption. You know, I even went online because I wanted it to really come from me. I didn't want it to come from the internet. And I saw one that kept glaring at me. Finish strong, finish strong. Because then I read under finish strong, it said every area of your life. Not just your business life and everything else. Finish strong. How do you want your kids to remember you? And as I compared and I came up with what I felt, oddly enough, I found it in John 15:13. And for all of you, the friends here, and all of you are, greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. And I'm like, wow. When everything, the storms happened in my life, the calming sea was, in the boxing, it was a group of people. It was a senator that I didn't even know. A senator that just happened to see about me caring for the Delaware community. And he was the only senator that could investigate a world championship boxing match because he was the only senator that headed the subcommittee on investigations. In the business world, it was 30 friends that get together with me, and we call, we have coffee, we help each other out, we network together. But when they saw a wounded warrior that they cared about, the 30 of them got together and met at EBC Carpet, Chip Rankin, and said, what can we do as a team to help? Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life or her life for their friends. It's powerful words, but it speaks volumes. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up and go to some questions, if anybody has any questions. And after you leave, I'll sing a song. Anybody have any questions?
So I know the answer already, because I know you don't have any regrets in life, but do you ever think about not taking that rematch back in that day? And how did you ever get over the hump if you did have regret at some point in your life?
I remember hitting where I live. Well, I ran out on Luncheon Road one day, and I ran through my development south of the states, and I ran through Stanley Woods. And it was and you'll appreciate this in your business. You know, some people call it like the fire in your belly. And one thing I always took a lot of pride in, and I don't like to use that word, but I took a lot of pride in was my commitment of dedication, that no one was ever going to outwork me. And I remember when I ran 3 or 4 miles and I ran around the development and I didn't feel that fire. I was trying, you know, it was most artificial. I'm like, oh man, you know what? And then he offered me Wood Jones. Then the person, because the more controversy, I was on the Tom Snyder show one night, and the more I was out there, the more I became a figurehead in controversy. So, of course, that's when the promoters needed, they could build off of that. So, and it was Ralph, you know, that was the hardest thing, was to find that fire. And to me, as you know in your own business, when that fire leaves, you've got to really do a sabbatical, you've got to do something to refuel that flame. And then I realized then it was time, and I look today and I'm like, wow, you know, I watch Bernard, he calls me once in a while, we stay in contact, and I watch what he's achieved, but at the same time, I don't think I would have been used as much as I have under all the controversy, to go to fairs, to be able to go to Gander Hill or anywhere else and have an impact as the fighter. And then when they come to me, they're like, man, this dude's a fighter. You know, so, but they get all excited, and I guess they're waiting to hear street talk and everything else, but then I connect with them at a level, and they start their sympathy act with me, and I said, wait a minute, I'm one of 14 children, and I didn't have my first pair of sneakers until I was 13, and I remember, it was in Hookah. It was black high-top Converse. So when they started saying, I don't have this and that, I knew that that's the day I knew when I ran it. My platform was not to go back to the boxing ring. My platform was out to make a difference. Did financially, the few $1 million, yeah, it would have been a major help at the time. It would have been a big benefit. But I tell you, if I didn't have a strong wife, it would have never happened. Because I think very few women would have stood by me in that situation. And then, you know, you see the level I was at. I mean, the guys that I'm talking about, Hopkins, these people generate a tremendous amount of money in the sport. But now they come back, you know, for each one of you in your own faith and whatever else. But think about this. I'm able to go in a locker room with $1, $2 million fighters in Atlantic City and all and pray with them. It's pretty cool with me. I mean, that's to me, because why? Because they're in a war then. If somebody's in a war, it's easy then to have faith. And so they're going to a war. So even if it's just sitting there and talking to them, because they can relate to me, the DNA is the same. So it's really, so many positives came out. And a number of you know my partners, George Beer, John Sobieski, Kevin Wilson, and Frankie Vasella. We have a boxing partnership. And it's neat because in our arenas, look how many positive things came out. Last fight at Dover Day-Offs, we had almost 380 business leaders at ringside. That was really cool. Everybody knew each other, everybody networked. To me, so, you know, I knew that I was the God always supplies my needs. So I knew that through all of it, it would happen. So with that being said, do I miss it? Yeah, I mean, when I hear bells, they want me to go out. I think Christmas, Salvation Army kicked me out of the mall with this bell ringing, so it's too dangerous. That's right, there's another bell. But I'm excited about what's happened, and most importantly, what I was getting to is this. Most importantly, not doing a rabbit trail, is I left healthy. When I meet fighters right now in Philadelphia, New York, wherever I'm at, and they have pugilistic dementia, or you know, some people call it fat lips, some people call it, there's another name for it, but they literally trip over their lips because they're affected by the sport of boxing. So, you know, I didn't realize the timing, but you know, now I can play another part with health and safety as well. Other question, Brian?
After one of our training sessions, I have to get my blood pressure tonight. You talk about an initiative that you're working on with bears and kids that are coming out of bears and kind of trying to partner them up with a peer to help them through that process. The city of Wilmington obviously ranks pretty high on the danger level. Can you speak on what kind of things are being done for these kids that are coming out of fairs, that you're, you know, with the Boys and Girls Club that you're working on?
You know, bro, we didn't script this, by the way. Your timing was perfect. On the way in, I spoke to the biggest city stakeholder that they own 600 affordable homes in the city of Wilmington. And we're into a business relationship, but they're also talking to me about this situation because these homes, a large number of homes, the young people that live there are truly at risk. I mean, all kids are at risk, all kids are challenged, but these kids, criminal backgrounds and everything else. Last Monday, the day Tiberi opened now, the money benefits an organization called Use the Price. It was founded in 1950 by Billy Graham. I work at the Boys and Girls Club and the 42 centers, and so we do our after-school programs, and we do a lot of programs with the kids there. But what this ministry does, which all of you appreciate, the governor actually endorsed it as a faith-based organization. What this organization does, they've been around, like I said, since 1950. They started this in Delaware. They go into Ferris. I don't know if you know this, but the recidivism in Ferris is absolutely incredible. The incarceration numbers are skyrocketing. I used to go there, and when I used to go there, we were all younger, when I go there, you wouldn't see the behavior that you see today. It's a different kid today. You wouldn't think with technology it would be that way. But at Ferris right now, what they do is they go in, and they befriend the kid. Then, most importantly, these kids know it too. In the past, they would befriend a kid, and then people would come in once a month, and these kids, they're used to that. A lot of times, they don't have a parent at the house, a grandmother might be raising them, a guardian might be raising them. This organization goes in, they set shop up, and then they follow the kid back to the city or wherever else these kids live. and they become a mentor like the Big Brothers Big Sisters does. They follow the kid. Nobody, literally, and I've heard people say this, throwaway, because some of the kids have either damaged their homes or whatever else, they can stay in those parts. Having that attitude is not going to help our society. Valuing relationships will. Getting in there, connecting with these kids, because I have friends, adult friends now, have been affected, and these guys are leading businesses and everything else today. And they say, I remember you used to come in and speak, and they're not much younger than me. But it's funny to see. But Brian, it's well taken. We raised $25,000 last Monday. All business people played the Dave Tiberi. We raised $25,000, and every dollar goes back to this outreach. What they do is, I tell you what, I don't know about you. My wife, I go to Southbridge, I go to Riverside. My wife doesn't want me to go there because that's where all the shootings are. But that's what needs help. But everybody, so that money is being put to work. These people are going in there, meeting these kids at libraries, making sure these kids are doing their homework. It's pretty powerful. And for people to be called to do that, we have got to hit that generation. Because one of our biggest problems working with the police community right now, it's not going to stop. We are having a major prescription drug problem. They're not going to be able to build enough prisons. So if we don't start working and mentoring and being in their lives, somebody else will. So this organization, again, having a tremendous impact. Right now, the numbers are large. The volunteers are picking up. People are dedicated. If you feel in any way you want to be involved, I don't care if it's financially or if you want to give time, mentor these kids. I started bringing them over to, I don't know if you were there one night, we started bringing them to the Ultimate Boxing Club. Very, very gifted kids. A lot of anger. Because they've always, no one's ever spent time with them. Nobody's ever loved them. And I tell you, walking some of these environments is pretty scary in these row houses because they literally live in squalor. Plywood, you don't even know they live there. There's plywood windows and all. So I think I'm excited about that. I'm seeing a tremendous impact. Other questions? With the Boys and Girls Club, I'll touch on one of the last things I'll touch on. The Boys and Girls Club now has 42 centers and they serve 19,500 kids here in the state. And I had a friend of mine, she called me and she said, hey Dave, she was doing it for business purposes. She said, I know they have an executive board, another board. So there is a value added to that. I keep talking about value because the three last things I was going to leave you with, the 3 points were valuing relationships, valuing friendships, and just valuing people. Is she said, I understand they have an executive board, and they have like a finance board, and they have a corporate board. And I said, that's true. She said, well, I just like to sit on the board because it'd be good for me to network. She works at a bank. And I told her, I said, that's pretty smart. I said, but, I think you have gifts and talents also that you can present. Not only to those boards, but I said, did you know there's 42 Boys and Girls Clubs? We have 42 boards. Well, she got a little excited then. She said, no. I said, well, it gives you a chance to meet with these Boys and Girls Club and spend time. So you see the benefit of, again, keep saying relationships because that's what it's all about, is, we do it for the right reasons, and like you would, it's unconditional, but the impact that it's going to have, it just pays dividends for your business too. Because people like to do business with people they trust and like. And if the relationship's there. So in closing, my challenge is touching on valuing relationships is found. I'll just touch on it again. But John 15:13, and look it up yourself. Greater love that someone laid down his life for his or her friends. And Brian, you hit the nail on the head when you asked that question because there's no more impact than our investment in our kids. And truly, these kids, in a sad way, are laying down their lives on the street of Wilmington every day. And they're doing it for their friends. And so, on a positive side, we can actually have a strong investment in the Boys and Girls Clubs, in the youth Christ organizations that are making a difference and helping our kids. So I knew that what's down the business side, I had to get into the kid work. So with that being said, thank you. We're going to stick around for a little bit, but I appreciate it. God bless.
Dave, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. And with the organization that you have, is there anything that we as a summit could do to be part of that?
I tell you, the question was, is there anything the summit can do? I would really encourage, and I've been doing this with other organizations, is next year's summit, William Penn High School right now, the high school I graduated from, it's had a lot of issues over the last few years. They started developing an agriculture department. The kids are learning agriculture with the farm. getting the kids in here, when I started hearing their testimonies, if you want to be touched, these kids are from the east side, Southbridge, get these kids so you can see what's going on with some of these programs that maybe you're not familiar with. What it does for them too is I've been really working to get some scholarships built up that these kids would have hope. Because most of them aren't even raised by grandparents anymore. Most of them are raised by guardians. It's really sad. So those are the type of things, how we can engage our kids more into the business community. I started a few years ago, I was pushing this thing called CLUES, Corporations, Law Enforcement, Educators Working with Students, which is bringing the law enforcement, the corporations, the educators, getting us all together finally, instead of individual groups. And so I think you have a great opportunity, would be my recommendation, to reach out and like I said, build that bridge with the Boys and Girls Club. But I can tell you, people at Georgia Fancy would love that. Because that's they're headed into STEM right now. Science, technology, so engineering and math, And so that's the direction. So I appreciate you thinking of that. That would be good. Anybody can help out.
Continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.